Always trust.
We ask the questions.
What is needed in the world?
Gost emisije Recite Al Jazeera je kontradmiral Stefan Pauli, komandant pomorskih jedinica NATO-a i zamjenik šefa operacija NATO-ve morske komande u Northwoodu u Velikoj Britaniji. Sa njim ćemo razgovarati o sigurnosti pomorskih ruta, strateškoj važnosti Arktika, strateškom rivalstvu na Bliskom istoku i Indo-Pacifiku, te o zaštiti vitalnih pomorskih komunikacijskih kablova. Admiral Pauli, hello and welcome to the Al Jazeera Balkans channel, and thank you so much for taking the time to speak to us. Now, allow me to begin by asking you, we have heard over the last 2 years a lot about, Finland and Sweden joining, after they joined the alliance, what they bring into the alliance. But you are a man of the Navy, and I want to ask you, how has NATO's maritime security posture evolved in the wake of Finland's and Sweden's accession to the alliance? And considering the strategic location of these Nordic countries, what specific advantages has NATO derived in the Baltic Sea, but also in the Arctic waters?
Yeah, Arun, first of all, thank you very much for giving me the possibility to be on your show and inform you and your team and the audience about the ongoings in NATO maritime domain. And an excellent question you're starting off with. Finland and Sweden just joined recently, as you all are aware, and as you stated right now. But see, in the past, Sweden and Finland already had strong links and ties with NATO. We were training and exercising together, so they have a legacy of cooperation in the Baltic Sea region. Sweden is very strong with capabilities in undersea warfare, undersea research, which they now contribute to NATO. And Finnish Navy is very specialized in, for example, mine warfare and also in undersea warfare, which are two capabilities NATO definitely will profit from in the region. Their skills in the Arctic environment and in the High North are very welcome also. And as you are aware, those two nations are Arctic nations, so they will contribute to our domain awareness and especially to our operational planning in these regions. So we are very happy to have those two nations as members in NATO, and will continue to work together with them as we did before.
Right. Now, Admiral, as far as I understand, these two countries have, before joining the alliance, have had extensive military cooperation with NATO, so they were very much interoperable. So I understand their transition was rather seamless into the alliance.
Yeah, this is absolutely true. There were some differences, and we're working to coordinate our plans and operations, but it was an extremely seamless transition into NATO. As I said, they were working with us before and during quite a long time. So that was no big learning process for them, nor for us.
Mm-hmm. Now, Admiral, from your perspective, just how important is the Arctic to NATO? And do you believe that, with the melting of Arctic ice, as we have seen over the last couple of years, will new trade corridors be made accessible in the very near future?
This is an extremely important point, because you might be aware that the Arctic and the High North have already been on a very high interest, strategic interest for NATO. And now the climate change transforming the calculus once again, and we need to adapt our plans and our operations. So maintaining sea lines of operations open in the Arctic region and the High North is again high on the schedule and high on the priority list for NATO. We have 7 Arctic nations who all depend on the free flow of traffic, free flow of commerce for the prosperity and safety and security for their countries. And peace and security in the High North and in the Arctic, I think, is in the interest of all nations. And with climate change now opening those sea lines more and more and longer during the year, I think freedom of action in the region and adherence to the rules-based international order should be on a high priority list for all nations also. NATO still maintains a strong routine presence in the Arctic and the High North, like we did throughout the last decades, with lots of important exercises which support and help us to adapt to the rather adverse conditions up there. And I would say that Sweden and Finland, in that context, really support with their experience so that we can safeguard for the foreseeable future the freedom of operation in this area.
Mm-hmm. Now, Admiral, you know, going back to what you just said, you know, how these two countries and how their accession to NATO has paved the way for greater presence in the Arctic. I wanted to ask you just very briefly, during the Cold War, has NATO had a significant presence in the north? And has this, what happened to this following the end of the Cold War?
Well, the end of the Cold War did not see us abandon the Arctic. Mm-hmm. No. There have always been strong important exercises in that region and strong cooperation amongst all the nations who are interested in the Arctic and the High North region. So there has nothing changed, but the change now is that with the melting ice and with the possibility for merchant traffic to pass through this area more frequently and in extended time periods over the year, I think the focus now needs to be to work together with all Arctic nations in order to safeguard not only the safe passage, but also save the environment from possible pollution aspects. And this is where NATO would wish to definitely support all the efforts to contribute to a safe and secure environment up there.
Right. Now, allow me to move to another part of the world which is extremely vital. We have seen a lot of security challenges over the last couple of months. You know, the Red Sea and the Bab el-Mandeb Straits. You know, so in the context of these current security challenges in both the Mediterranean and the Middle East, how do you, as NATO, how does NATO address issues such as state-sponsored piracy, you know, attacks on international ships? I mean, all these security challenges pose a threat to global shipping, and if it affects us and yourself, you know, people living in Europe.
Yeah, again, a very important point which you bring up here. And just let me explain why NATO is looking worldwide in the maritime. See, the Supreme Allied Commander Europe's area of interest and area of responsibility is mainly in the northwestern sphere of the Earth. But you can't divide the seas, the maritime. Mm-hmm. So anything that happens, and you pointed it out very correctly, in the Red Sea or in the Arabian Sea, in the South China Sea, in Southern Atlantic, in the Pacific, may have some kind of an influence in the area of responsibility of NATO's. Mm-hmm. Because merchant vessels run their commerce, run their cargo worldwide, around the world, so you cannot divide the maritime. And therefore, what we are doing is we're building maritime domain awareness worldwide. That is, we try to gather all different pieces of information we can receive from the open world, open source world, from our partners, from intelligence, in order to assess and evaluate what is going on, what are the current trends in the maritime environment, and where are the possible influences into our region of responsibility. So we are heavily invested in maritime domain awareness. And through NATO's initiatives, for example, in the Eastern Mediterranean or in the Mediterranean Sea, as Operation Sea Guardian, we are assessing, monitoring the pattern of life there to see irregularities which we could react on. We would wish to understand the regional actors and understand the region, the environmental region there also. So we have focused operations in these areas going on, which we then afterwards assess, and out of these, we will adopt and adapt our operational planning and deploy our forces accordingly.
Mm-hmm. Now, Admiral, I wanted to ask you, in this case, so if NATO is having various activities in the Middle East, does it also rely on its non-NATO member allies for support and coordination?
Well, now we need to be careful because you might define the Middle East other than we do.
Right.
We are operating in the furthest east we operate is in the Eastern Mediterranean Sea. So this is the area where our maritime forces are present at any given time. So in the Mediterranean, we saw last year the deployment of a team and a detachment of the Australian Air Forces, our partner nations, for Operation Sea Guardian, and they plugged in seamlessly and supported this operation. This year we had a PARSEX with our Indo-Pacific partner Japan in the Mediterranean. And currently we are this month still working with Ireland and Morocco in order to further our interoperability with their forces. So you see, even if we are not present in those areas, it's of utmost importance for us because they are like-minded states and countries and regions who share the same security concerns and the desire for peace and stability. And we invite them into our region in order to work together and exchange experience.
Right, right, sir. Now you touched upon Japan and the Indo-Pacific, and I wanted to ask you, given the increasing geopolitical focus on the Indo-Pacific region, how does NATO plan to augment its maritime security cooperation, with key partners that you just mentioned, with Japan, with the Philippines, and with Australia?
Well, we invite our partners into our exercises. We host common conferences, and we visit our forces and exchange experience. This is what we do. We do not deploy our forces under NATO flag outside the area of responsibility, but our nations, the national navies, they operate constantly in those areas. And this furthers our common understanding and really facilitates us working together once we are working together under NATO flag, for example, in the Mediterranean or in the Atlantic.
Now, another thing which interests me a lot is the security of undersea cables and infrastructure. And NATO recently held its first meeting discussing critical undersea infrastructure networks. Now, with rising challenges to undersea infrastructure, what can be done to enhance the security of these undersea cables and pipelines, and to monitor potential threats? We've seen quite a number of sabotage attacks over the last couple of years. Still not sure who was behind it, but these are definitely a target.
Again, another very important issue for regional stability and for the well-being of our nations. The undersea infrastructure is not owned by NATO, is most of the time not even owned by nation states. It's mostly owned by industry. So the first responders always is industry, and they are very well set and capable of monitoring their underwater infrastructure. Where NATO comes in, and you mentioned the center we stood up just a few months ago, the NATO Center for the Security of Critical Undersea Infrastructure here at Northwood. This center, the idea behind this center is to offer to the nations some kind of information hub, an interface where they could plug in order to exchange information, experience, and at the end, when we are fully operating capable, and if the NATO Council, our ruling body, approves it, we could then, on a case-to-case basis, upon request of nations, support with our special underwater capabilities. So this is the idea behind standing up this center, because we all really depend on undersea infrastructure, may they be pipelines for gas, for oil, for hydrogen, or the cables. But on the second point, the second task for this center is to test new technology in order to facilitate a better monitoring and a better reaction on pinpointed attacks or assessed fiddling with those infrastructures. So we need to gather all the brilliance and the intelligence with the nations in order to come up with a solution, because otherwise it will be a task which is nearly impossible because of the vast area which needs to be covered.
Now, Admiral, if you could just stay on this point for a little longer, could you please explain to our viewers the significance of these undersea cables and what kind of data, what kind of information do they transmit, and how can meddling with these undersea cables impact the daily lives of an average European?
I would say the communication cables running across the oceans, they are they are really very important, not only for communications, but also for the whole financial transactions. So all the financial data, the financial resources, they run across those cables. So cutting those cables will definitely influence the flow of money around the world. The second, which I would wish to point out, is gas and oil pipelines. If they are sabotaged, they either with oil and gas, not so much, but with oil, they produce a detrimental impact on the environment. And with gas, well, if we do not receive sufficient gas, especially coming in the winter time or coming up winter time, we then face severe problems heating our houses, producing energy, and so on. And the same applies for windmill farms, offshore windmill farms, who are connected with electricity lines. So if you take out a grid of electricity of windmill farms, the electricity has to come from somewhere else. So this is the challenges we're facing if undersea infrastructure is sabotaged.
Right, understood. And finally, as we move towards the end of our interview, I have two more questions for you, sir. And I wanted to touch upon the Black Sea. And you know, I'm under the impression that after the collapse of after the end of the Cold War, we somehow forgot about the strategic importance of the Black Sea, only to realize it back in 2014 when Russia annexed Crimea, and you know everybody talked about the strategic importance of Sevastopol for Russia's Black Sea fleet. Now, a question to you is, how is NATO cooperating with its Black Sea allies, with littoral states, which which are member states of NATO, you know, to partner and to cooperate in wake of these numerous security challenges in the region?
First of all, if I may, I disagree with you that NATO, after the end of the Cold War, kind of forgot about the Black Sea, at least in the maritime, and I know that it has been the same for the air and the land domain. From the maritime, which I can speak to, we have continuously had our surface task groups in the Black Sea, operating with regional nations and with our partners, Georgia and Ukraine, in the area, where we continuously build up and build up our MCM, mine countermeasure expertise, and trained and exercised together with all the regional navies. I tend to disagree with that we forgot about. And even now, with the conflict going on, the war going on there, we continue to cooperate and enhance the cooperation with our partners. For example, as I stated beforehand, a Georgian boarding team is now embarked on the flagship of Operation Sea Guardian. And we've had several subject matter experts and mobile training teams to go to Georgia in order to provide valuable training for them. Same applies for Ukraine, where we are inviting Ukraine to NATO and to nations conferences where they participate in order to exchange the information and learn from their operational experience. So again, we continue and enhance the cooperation and the presence in the Black Sea region. And this might be also demonstrated by the Romanian, Bulgarian, and Turkish Black Sea Task Force, which has been stood up just a few months ago, where currently Turkey is leading the effort of building up a viable force which could deal with and which will deal with the floating mine threat. This all in order to keep the merchant traffic safe and keep proficiency in the area and assure not only our countries, our nations, but also our partner nations over and outside the region also, that we will be there for their security in order to defend their countries and in order to keep up the free travel of commerce and the sea lines of communication.
Right, sir. Here it's perhaps worth mentioning that the Bosphorus Straits are a very key, key shipping area for the export of grain and oil and other materials from Ukraine, Russia, Bulgaria, Romania, and elsewhere towards Europe and towards Africa and Asia. And finally, my last question to you would be, about the strategic importance of the transatlantic alliance. We have heard of the last 2.5, 3 years how the NATO alliance is stronger than ever in the context of the maritime domain, where you are an expert. Do you believe that this is true, that the alliance is stronger than ever? And if so, why is it stronger than ever?
Well, the strength of the alliance is the contribution of every single member state. Every single member state makes the alliance stronger because the symbiosis of the capabilities we have, they are building the whole. The NATO is, as you are aware, a defensive alliance. We seek stability in the Euro-Atlantic area and beyond where possible. And with the addition of Finland and Sweden, with their unique capabilities, we even grew our tool set in our toolbox, which contributes to stability and peace in our area. And we believe we are stronger than ever because not only of the growing number of member states, but also because of the growing number of assets we have available, especially in the maritime domain. There are more and more ships, but we do not necessarily only count ships, because every ship or every class of ships has a special capability.
Right.
And and more countries joining NATO, our capability set grew. And this brings us to the assessment, and we are proud to state it, that the alliance is stronger than ever.
Right. Admiral Stefan Pauli, it was such a pleasure speaking to you. Thank you so much once again for your time.
I thank you very much for having me. And I would wish you and your team the best for the future. And it's extremely important for us to have the capability, the chance to reach out to your audience. Thank you very much.
Thank you, sir.
Always trust. We ask the questions.
What is needed in the world?